shiur. And this is his opportunity, as well as Mr. Shvili is going to be sitting in. Can I call you Shvili for short? Okay. Is sitting in this shiur. And when we're learning Tanakh in Eretz Yisrael, especially, not only are we learning something which is so holy, but it's so applicable to our lives today, our lives tomorrow. Notwithstanding the fact that when we're learning Tanakh, we often hike, go in the areas where major events happened and reconnect. Since we are Am HaNetzach, a nation of eternity, and our Torah is nitzchit, is eternal because Hashem is eternal, and we belong, we connect to the eternal, and it has so much value. Today, the state of Israel is a young state. After 2,000 years of galut, Hashem, through very key figures, some of which don't have a yarmulke on their heads, have led the way for this vision where the hearts and souls of so many people are yearning to come back. Things which are not rationally explained, things which maybe go against pragmatic philosophical life, but we're right now amidst this renaissance. For the first time in 2,000 years, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai. And it's with a big bang. And so illustrious, and so many great things happening, with all the difficulties we have, and we have a lot of difficulties. But the fact that today, Yerushalayim is the center of our nation, spiritually, industrially, technologically, Israel is making a shining light on the entire world, not only to us. And we're part of it. The fact that we are here now in this generation, even though we're through the diaper stages of a new state, and we'll talk more about this diaper stage of the emerging of a new nation in a new land, which certainly Sefer Shoftim, which transpires for more than 300 years, we've been learning about the ups and downs of our nation. And now it's a big down. We have a civil war. A civil war in light of the event called Pilegesh Bagiva. Okay? Hop, skip, and jump. Maybe 10 kilometers north of us, this town of Giva in the tribal area of Binyamin. Thank you, Benny. A terrible atrocity happens. The molesting, the raping of this Pilegesh woman, and she eventually dies, and her Baal, husband can call it, according to most of the Rishonim, a Pilegesh is without chuppah, without a ketubah and kiddushin, and he chops her up into so many pieces, and she's sent out to all the tribes, arousing their anger, their zealousy, and he himself gives testimony, and we noticed that he's not precise in 3 components of his testimony, and the tribes of Israel conglomerate together, ki ish echad, a term that's not used at all during the book of Shoftim, Sefer Shoftim, because we suffer. If I go to the doctor, would you please give me the diagnosis? He would say, this nation suffers from tribal division. Tribal division. Mamish, we're divided. We're not united. Here, the nation unites. All the tribes come together. They're full of power and energy. And they ask, hand them over. And Binyamin, as we learned, doesn't want to hand them over. We're not going to get back into all the details. And to our great sorrow and regret, Milchemet Achim. A civil war. Milchemet Achim. 40,000 die in the clashes. That's 40,000 die from the tribes of Israel. And then how many die? 20,000+ die.
600.
Except for 600 men of Binyamin. That's called like a Holocaust. I don't know, we should be careful not to use the word Holocaust. It sounds like the tribe is annihilated. Hakchadat shevet. Lakhid shevet. A terrible thing. Okay?
Didn't they just leave the woman and the kids?
No. Beautiful question. That was the question you asked yesterday. When they finished the war and 600 fled going east towards the Judean desert, right? That's east. Okay? They came back and they went into the towns. And as the Rishonim, like the Radak and others explain, they, finito. Can you speak Italian? Finito. They finished the women and children. Everyone is killed. It's so hard, so painful to read and understand this. Our own brothers, okay? And they think they're doing proper judgment. That's what we learned yesterday. And now, amidst Perek of Aleph, we're coming to a new situation. And today, we want to understand, let's just say that Kalman, you marry into Mishpachat, your Abba and Ima, and her Abba and Ima are called in Hebrew? Mechutanim. You have a nice Yiddish accent. Mechutanim. Why is the word mechutanim? Because you're a chatan. And through the chatuna, both parents became, what in English called in-laws. They became mechutanim. Okay? Today we're going to learn that Bnei Binyamin have mechutanim. Who are their in-laws? Who has a similar law?
Yosef.
Who?
Yosef.
Anshe Yavesh Gilad. Yesterday, we learned at the beginning of Perek Kaf Aleph that perhaps earlier, because the Tanakh is not written in chronological order, perhaps earlier, when they made a cherem, everyone must come and join us to go to war against Binyamin, and if not, then he used those words. Okay? You may not want to sit next to me tomorrow, because I get tougher every day. Be careful. And now, after the war ends, they survey, investigate, and they find out that Jews of a tribe living in the Giladi Mountains. Would you point to where the Giladi Mountains are? Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Atishbi, Eliyahu HaGiladi. It's over there. Right? A few more degrees to the left. On the other side of the Jordan River, the Moabite mountains end somewhere here. We're just going a little north. And then we have a mountain range called Hare Gilad, the Giladi Mountains. There's the southern Giladi Mountains, and then there's a break in the mountain. We saw that on a trip going north to the Golan a few months ago. That's where the Yabok spills into the Jordan River. Okay, this entire area is the Hare Gilad. And then from the Yabok, remember the word Yabok, the term Yabok, in the struggle of Yaakov Avinu with Esav? The first wrestling match in the Torah. It wasn't a university match, it was a Torah match. Yaakov versus the Malach of Esav. And who won? And who was on the injury list? Yaakov. He was only injured. He wasn't devastated. He was limping. Now, what?
Must have been quite a match.
It was a very big fight. There were people that were voting on behalf of the angel of Esav. They lost a lot of money.
I should have called my book.
Yeah. Now, the northern Giladi Mountains, which eventually leads up to the area of the Golan Heights, is by large populated by the tribe of half of Menachem. So we assume that the people living in this town called Yavesh Gilad are members of the tribe of Menachem. When we learn that the tribe of Menachem, these people living there, did not join the war, there's a problem. They didn't join the war. So what? What do you mean they didn't join the war? There was a shavua, an oath, taken. And as I understand, if I understand correctly, it's not an individual oath in God's name. It's like a shavua al dat rabim, for the sake of the many, the public. You asked a question 2 days ago. Is there a way to untie, to permit a shavua? But before I get to the question, let's get to the content of the shavua. The tribes got together and said, everyone must come with us, and everyone mobilized. And if not, you're violating a severe public oath, and you could be put to death if you don't come. That was basically the wording of the Shvuah, which is also called like a cherem, to be excommunicated. And you asked, isn't there a way to untie a Shvuah? Now let's just say you're sending out, Binyamin Weissman, you're sending out invitations for Yom Kippur night services. What are you saying? Everyone is welcome to, what's the name of that service? No, the Yom Kippur night. Kol Nidre. You're cordially invited to Machon Meir services of Kol Nidre at, 4:30, but maybe we're changing the clock by then. Could be the winter clock. 4:30, 4:45. What is Kol Nidre? All vows. What else?
The gates close.
No, we're opening the gates. You're talking about Ni'ilah. Closing the gates. Dives voces? Yeah. Kol Nidre is the opening of the gates. It's bigger. How big is the goal in football? How many meters? The width. 7 meters. The gates of heaven are even larger than that. To take our prayers, accept our prayers. Now, what else are we permitting? Nidarim, vows. What else? Shavuot, oaths. If you took an oath in God's name, we're making a beit in a court, and we're now freeing, annulling, absolving ourselves from these vows, oaths, shavuot, and charamim, which are like what we're dealing here. So, when I answered your question, I said, no, you can't untie this. Why didn't you say, don't we do that on Kol Nidre night? Would you like to ask that question now? Matanya says the difference, what we're going to be doing on Kol Nidre is what? Is annulling, freeing personal obligations, personal oaths, vows, things that we did and we didn't say, did 3 times, we didn't say Bali Neder. However, here, we're dealing with a public vow, a public oath, a public cherem. That's not simple. It's very hard. I don't even know if there's a way. It's very hard to find a loophole how to free it. So when I asked you, how is it that now there are mechutanim to the tribe of Binyamin, and they are Anshe Yavesh Gilad? How are they mechutanim? What did the tribes declare against the tribe of Binyamin? They have to be wiped out. They have to be wiped out. They made a shavua against them. They did a terrible thing. Hand them over. They don't hand them over, we're going to go to war. Who violated a shavua, an oath of God's name, that if you don't come to war, you're going to be in trouble? The tribe of apparently Menachem, their name is not mentioned, the people living in the Giladi mountains on the other side of the Jordan River. So that's how we can call them. Rav Kashtiel uses that term. There are mechutanim, they're in-laws, because they both violated or have hovering over themselves a terrible thing. Now, yesterday, we started understanding that the situation in Binyamin is terrible. How many men alive? 600. Of the entire tribe, tens of thousands died in the war. How many women alive? Close. Efes. No girls of Binyamin are alive. What you're referring to is the beginning of the solution of Igdor. Okay, very good. No women, no children alive. This is called almost like annihilation. If you can, Matanya, move to your right, I can see Yonatan with my right eye. There you go. I have to see Yonatan. Gives me a lot of chizuk. Right? His smile is such a special smile. Okay. The people of Israel are looking for a solution. And it's interesting enough, the solution they find is by going to do din against Gilad, Yavesh Gilad. They send soldiers over and they kill. They kill the men, they kill the women of age, but girls that were not married or did not have relations are taken. How many of them? 400 of them, of Yoshvei Gilad. And now we can make a chasana, now we can make a wedding. For who?
For the Binyamin.
How many of them?
600. Only 400.
Only 400. But we have a problem. There are 200 men of Binyamin unmarried. No, Nishkafelach, no, it's not the end of the world. Let them not be married. The fact that we're learning in this chapter, the efforts, the thoughts, how do we find a solution, shows us that every man must marry. Every Jewish man has to get married and bring a family into the world. The first commandment God gave Adam HaRishon was what? Pru Uravu, to be fruitful and multiply. So they're not going to say, okay, we're just going to leave them alone. And this brings us to Psukim. Let's now read verses 18 and 19, Bivakasha, in this parak. Vanachnu, by the way, remember now, we said they're mechutanim, they're connected in a negative way, right? They're connected in a negative way.
There's no mechutanim because they're all dead.
There's no one left, you're saying. B'nai Binyamin, other than the 600, and the Yavesh Gilad, they have like the same laws. They violated terrible things. Okay? If I ask you for one moment to stop and get your mind in the Tanakh, can you cite another example where Binyamin and Yavesh Gilad are connected to one another as a prelude to the solution? Who learned Sefer Shmuel? David, you learned Sefer Shmuel? You did? I thought you did. Kalman, did you learn Sefer Shmuel?
Wait, does that have to do with
Shaul HaMelech.
yeah.
Everyone open up in your Tanakh to Shaul HaMelech. Let's skip for just a short moment. That'll be in Perek Lamed Aleph. Open up to Yud Aleph of Sefer Shmuel. It's also related to Parshat HaShavua. Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11 of Sefer Shmuel. We see, you can have it in here if you want to look at. We have an attack. Vayal Nachash Amoni, Vayichan al Yavesh Gilad. The Ammonites. Ammon. Today, Ammon, you may call it Amman. The beginning of the parak of Yud Aleph, chapter 11 of Sefer Shmuel. And they're about to attack the Jews in the Giladi mountains. Okay? And they try to convince them, let's make a peace treaty. But Nachash is not ready. And right now, there's negotiation going on. Okay? And they ask for a 7-day delay. And they send messengers to Givat Shaul. What is Givat Shaul? Yes and no. We once said at this table, like Thomas says, you're right, the neighborhood next door is Givat Shaul, but I was told not long ago that it's named after someone else, and not Shaul HaMelech. Where is the real Givat Shaul? When you come north in the Binyamin region, right by Pisgat Ze'ev, you see on the left-hand side of the road, on top of a mountain, a gigantic edifice, this really large structure that King Hussein in 1966 started building, and in 1967 Hashem said, I have different plans for you, King Hussein. Get out of here. Right? The Jordanians and others lost to Am Yisrael in a 6-day war, remember? So that structure on top of that mountain, some experts of the land of Israel say that was the area where Shaul built his palace, or commonly called Givat Shaul, Mamash, overlooking the Yerushalayim Binyamin Road. So they sent messengers, and who is willing to help Shaul HaMelech? Shaul HaMelech calls for a giyus, an enlistment of soldiers. You see in verse 7, anyone that doesn't come to this war, we're going to cut him up. And he cuts up a pair of cattle. So we already see that there is an affinity, a connection between the tribe of Binyamin, here led by Shaul HaMelech, and the Jews living in the Giladi Mountains. That's one connection. Where do we see at the end of Sefer Shmuel Aleph another connection? Matanya, you mentioned it. Which event happened?
That's the battle. He saves them from Nachash. No, that's what he was to do.
The end of Shaul HaMelech was on top of the Gilboa Mountains. We lost a war. We lost a war fought by the Plishtim against us. The Plishtim are coming from southwestern Israel, Ashdod, Ashkelon, the Gaza Strip area. They came so much inland, and they came to the Gilboa Mountain. You know what the Gilboa Mountains are? Overlooking the Afula Beit Shan Valley. We're talking about northeastern Eretz Yisrael. We lost a war. Who died? Which two great leaders died in that war? Shaul and his son Yonatan. Excellent, Yonatan. What did the Plishtim do? They cut off their heads.
Didn't he kill himself?
So that has to be understood, that he asked his Misharei to kill him, and that he shouldn't die by their hands. When the Plishtim found him, they cut off his heads, and they planted or implanted his head inside a wall in the town of, very good, Beit Shan. How did you know that? In the town of Beit Shan. You know where Beit Shan is? You'll learn later. Say there. We'll have to take you on a. You have to stay another semester, and you have to come. We'll take you around. Now, you too, Yonatan. In any event, that's a desecration of God's name. It's a Chilul Hashem. The king of Israel's head is implanted in the wall of Beit Shan. Who sent a special task unit at night? The Giladi people. Dun, 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 at nighttime, with flashlights, I assume. And they found, and they brought him to Jewish burial. So we see two great events of a connection, a bond between the tribe of Binyamin and the tribe of the Giladi people. So now here we see they're mechutanim for bad things. Let's go back to our parak. These two events, obviously, right. So you're right. In opposite order, we see a continuation of an affinity or connection between the two. Pasuk Yudchet. We're back in our chapter 21 of Shoftim. Vanachnu lo nuchal latet lem nashim mibnotenu. The tribes are saying we have a problem. We can't give our girls over to Binyamin. Right now they did tshuva, they cried in Shiloh, they brought sacrifices, they did vidoy, they said we did a terrible thing. After the war happened and tens of thousands of Jews happened, they said, Gewalt, we did a terrible thing. We want to do tshuva. Let's now help the tribe of Binyamin remain alive. But we have a problem. We can't give our daughters in marriage. Why? Ki nishbu b'nei Salemur arur notein isha leBinyamin. Cursed is the person that gives his daughter to Binyamin. So we can ask, why isn't this curse opened or freed? It's part of a shvuah, and it's a public shvuah. What are you saying?
They let them dance in like a field, and they took them.
Don't ruin the suspense. We're about to read this pasuk. Let's read the next pasuk, Yutet. He knows all the Tanakh by heart, I see. Verse 19.
I read it like a month ago. So.
Really? You're very humble. Vayomru, pasuk Yutet, verse 19. Yutet, Vayomru, Hine, Chag Adonai b'Shilo, miyamim yamima, אשר מצפונה לביתל מזרחה השמש, למסילה, העולה מביתל שכמה, ומנגב ללבונה. Gentlemen, who's reminded about a special encounter, meeting, Chag? Chag of God? I don't understand. Is there a Chag of Hashem in Shiloh? Did I miss a pasuk in the Torah? 1 second, there's Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. Is this Chag mentioned in the Torah? But it says Chag Hashem b'Shiloh. What kind of Chag is it? Miyamim yamima. It didn't start now. It could be in existence for a lot of time. 1 second, where is Shiloh? Mitzvona leBeitel. It's exactly this place, north of Beitel, Mizrach HaShemesh, on the eastern side of the road, of the Mesilah. The Mesilah is the road. Which road? Hola mi Beitel Shechema. We have a famous road in the Binyamin Ephraim region. Okay? The center of the land of Israel, as some of you probably know, is not Dizengoff or Kfar Saba or Hoda Sharon. The center of Israel is the backbone, Yerushalayim, to Gush Etzion going south, to Hebron, and going north, Beitel, Shiloh, and Shechem. Okay? I've noticed, I've traveled there once in a while. I know exactly where this place is. Okay? Beitel, Shiloh, and Shechem. And of course, Shiloh is the home of the Mishkan for 369 years. So it's a very popular road from Beit El going toward Shechem, and it's Negev to Livona. We mentioned in our study in Sefer Shoftim, just like today there's a town called Ma'alei Livona, the heights of Livona. Very good. One of the 11 ingredients of the Ketoret is Livona. What is it called in English? Frankincense? What is it called in English? Frankincense? So apparently, some experts suggest that the area there is called Livona because what would grow? What would they grow there? The Livona incense. Geschmeckt? Can you smell it from here? Wow, it's a strong smell. All the way here, from Livona to here. Okay? Now, gentlemen, look at question number 2. This holiday in Shiloh obviously turned into a different holiday that we know thousands of years later written in the oral Torah. Is it Chanukah? Tu B'Av, right? Where is this described? At the end of which Masechet? Which Masechet? Tanit. Excellent. The last Mishnayot of the 4th chapter, Masechet Tanit, we learn about Tu B'Av. Famous things happen to Tet Vav, the 15th. Okay? Tet Vav, the 15th of Vav, happened there. Now, what's happening now? Let's continue reading. Pasuk Kaf, verse 20. Okay? Vayitzavu et b'nei Binyamin lemor. They told the boys, come here. 200 of you, come here. Lichu va'araftem bakramim. Today, indeed, when you travel in this area, you see mamish. It's like the Tanakh coming alive again. There's a famous route that we would park our cars on highway number 60 and hike, a few kilometers going northeast and northwest and going to Mayan Oz. You know where Mayan Oz is? On the other side of Eli. Mayan Oz. There's a very famous spring. There's a lovely little pool there. It's a favorite place, and we would do hikings to go there. And mamish now in the last 7-8 years, boutique vineyards have been planted there. You have a few thousand trees, and they'll produce large quantities of wine, a smaller number in quantity, but they're sold for a lot of money in New York, and in Vienna maybe, and in France. And this is really a fulfillment of the prophecies of our prophets, that the Jews will come back and be planting their vineyards again, and these wines are winning prizes in international wine tasting contests. Mamash, in the Shiloh area. And then when you travel up to Shiloh, you can see in the valley the kramim that they're talking about, the vineyards. Okay? And they're saying to the men, go hide, ambush in the kramim. Why? Pasuk Kaf Aleph 21. Uriitem, and when you see, v'inei, surprise. Im yetzu v'not shilo lachu b'mecholot. If the girls are coming there to do some dancing in the vineyards, v'tzatam min hakramim, then leave the area where you are. V'chataftem lachem. Grab a girl. Would you like to marry me? On the first, love at first sight. Imagine. Ish ishto mi b'not shilo. V'alachtem eretz binyamin. Now, I have a question for all of you. In addition to this very simple shidduch system, that you see a girl and you ask, would you like to marry me? And if she says yes, we have a solution for the 200 men of Binyamin. Question number 1. Does this encounter not halachically violate the oath made by the tribes?
Giving them to them.
We're not giving the girls over, but rather the girls are being... Now let me ask you a very simple halachic question. Can you force a girl to marry you? Yes or no? No. Our Jewish values are that it takes 2 to tango. You need the consent of Mr. and the future Mrs. Okay? She can only be married according to her will and desire. So you've answered question 1. You've answered question number 2. Let's read now Pasuk Kaf Bet. Ve'aya, and it'll be Ki yavo avotam, if their Abba will come, O achehem lariv eleinu. If some other people come to question this, to make a quarreling, you know what you can say? You say, hey, what are you doing? This is not halachically proper. V'amarnu aleihem chanunu otam. Chanunu. Are you the one that asks for in the blessing of peace? Chen v'chesed? Are you the one? Ask you. Oh, you're the one asking for chen?
Yeah.
I saw someone here. In the last blessing of the Shemon Esrei, the blessing for peace, we're very peaceful people. We ask for shalom 3 times a day. So don't believe all that propaganda in Austria and Germany that we are the transgressors. We are the, what's that word? Aggressors, right. We're always looked upon in European television and radio as the aggressors. We're a very peaceful people. We're very delicate. We're very fine and refined people. Sim shalom. Give us chen and chesed and rachamim and mercy.
Amen.
That's who we are.
Amen.
What kind of answer is this? V'amarnu aleim chanunu otam, from the words chen, have mercy on them. Ki lo lakachnu ish ishto b'milchama. We didn't take men and women in war. Ki lo atem netatem ke'etei shamo. I want you to see together with me the more deeper understanding of this loophole, this legal loophole that the tribes thought, out of their mercy, out of their intellect, how do we save the tribe of Binyamin to remain alive without having families and bringing children into the world? It's a matter of a few generations and finito. They'll be finished. There'll be none left. See together with me the Radak source, the top source on here. The Radak, Rabbeinu David ben Kimchi, one of the great Rishonim. He says the following. Chanunu otam, kimo mayhem, have mercy from them. Put your finger on the place, and you'll be able to follow. Klomar, me'anashim ha'ela, from these women, techanunu, have mercy on them, shetanichum lem, leave them alone, let them be married. That's what it means, chanunu otam, leave them alone, have grace to them, let them be married. O perush kemo asher chanan elokim et avdecha. He brings a verse. Where do anyone know this phrase? Chanan elokim et avdecha. Who said that? In which holy book?
Tehillim.
No.
What was the question?
Line 2, the Radak is using the word chen. Chanan elokim et avdecha. No, you don't remember the verse? Has to do with the meeting between Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov humbles himself. Remember, he was waiting, getting ready for a war. He thought Esav is coming to kill him, and in the end he doesn't. And he gives him a gift, and he says, these are my children. All this is the grace of God that God gave to your servant. He's humbling himself. In Breshit, that's correct. Chanan Elokim Yadecha Klomar Tenu Otam Lanu B'matana. Leave these girls as a gift. Ki lakachnu lebnei Binyamin hadnotarim nashim b'milchama. Because we're interested in taking 4 bnei Binyamin for the leftovers. What are we interested to give them women in through the war? Ki akol haragnu, we killed everyone. There's no woman alive. Lefichach, therefore, anu tzrichim shilam nashim. Therefore, we have to look out to make sure that Binyamin has women. Shelo yimacheh shevet, so the tribe is not wiped out. Vim tomru shetavru ala cherem. Maybe you want to suggest that the tribe should override this oath and transgress this cherem. Shechrabnu ish et yiten libito leBinyamin. Can you violate this oath called the cherem? Answer. New line. Anyone know what the acronym Aleph Resh Zayin Lamed is? Amru Rabbeinu Zal. Our sages said, Ki achar kein hitiru shevet Binyamin lavo b'kahal v'lisa isha mishara shvatim. Ki matzu heter b'lashon ha'cherem. Sheim nishbeu amru ish mimenu lo yiten bito leBinyamin. V'darshu mimenu velo mi banenu. Imkein me'adorot ha'ba'im achreim ayu yicholim nisanesh. I want to explain. Right now, we have a major issue. We're afraid the tribe of Binyamin is going to be wiped out. Halachically, it's not easy to untie an oath. Private oaths, kol nidre, can be freed. But an oath, al dat rabim, usually, if I'm not mistaken, the Talmud says, and I took advice with some of the scholars here at the lunch table with the rabbis, the Gemara says in Masechet Sanhedrin, if you want to reverse a decision of a Sanhedrin, do you know what you need in order to reverse a decision?
A beit-din.
Not only a beit-din, not only a Sanhedrin, that's greater in the former court, b'chokhmah u'b'minyan. If you want to reverse a decision made by a court of Israel like a Sanhedrin, you have to find a new Sanhedrin that's greater than the former, b'chokhmah, in wisdom, and b'minyan, in number. That was not in existence. Our situation is plummeting spiritually. We have very few Torah scholars in this generation whatsoever. The situation is not sababa, the situation is batata. You've heard that expression already? You'll explain to it later.
Sweet potato.
Okay, we don't know the source of that thing. Was sweet potatoes are sweet. Why is it called batata? I don't know. That you need Rashi or Tosfot. In any event, he says here the following. The wording, first of all, like your answer, we're not taking women for them. They, the men, are taking women by themselves. Answer number 1. The next generation, there will not be a prohibition. We talked about a violation of our generation. So really, one of the great things that happens on Tu B'Av, maybe after this generation, is that the tribes are allowed to intermarry with Binyamin. That's one of the great things that happened. And then, wow, maybe that'll give us light why Tu B'Av in Mishnaic times becomes one of the happiest holidays. Look at the next source number 6 on this page. Don't ask me why it's 6, I'm not going to tell you. Mishnah, Mesechet Ta'anit, Perek Daled, Mishnah Chet. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Mishnah. Lo ayu yamim tovim li Yisrael. There were no better days for the Jewish people. Ki chamishasar be'av uki Yom Kippurim. Wow. Yom Kippur and the 15th of Av are the happiest days on our Hebrew calendar. Why? Shebahen, on these days, Benot Yerushalayim Yotzot B'klei Lavan. The girls of Yerushalayim wear white dresses. She'ulim borrowed. Shelo levayesh mi she'ein lo. They don't want to embarrass any girls that don't have. Therefore, all the girls, they borrow from friends, from a kindness from Gemachim, white dresses. Kol hakelim tunim tefillah, they bring it to a mikveh to make sure there's no tumah in the dresses. Ubenot Yerushalayim yotzot v'cholot bakramim. In Yerushalayim, on Tu B'Av and on Yom Kippur, they start dancing, the girls, not with the men, separate dancing. We're talking about God-fearing girls. It's not rock and roll here. Yotzot v'cholot bakramim, umayu omrot, and what would they say on Yom Kippur and on Tu B'Av? Bachor, hey, sweetie, sana einecha, lift up your eyes array and see. Mata borer lecha, look at me. Al titein einecha b'noi, tein einecha b'mishpacha. Don't look always at the external thing. She's beautiful, she's not beautiful. She's gorgeous, she's not gorgeous. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing that says here is mishpacha. What does mishpacha mean? What? Family. What else?
Upbringing.
What kind of upbringing? What kind of family did she grow up in? God-fearing family, good midot, okay, personality. That's the most important. Not is, would you please tell me how much money you have in your bank account? That's not the most important thing. Unlike what we think in the Western world, money is not the most important thing. I know you need something to buy milk and butter and a bissel of bread, a shtukel broit, right? But that's not the most important thing. My dear friends, apparently from this event that's not mentioned in the Torah, that the girls in Shiloh have a holiday, that they go dancing in the Kramim. Come here, you, the 200 boys from Binyamin, we want you to go there and you grab who you think is right for you. Of course, she has to agree. And by doing so, we're solving the matter. We're solving the matter that we're not destroying the tribe of Binyamin, and we're making efforts. What is the foundation for these efforts? What brought about it? For this and more in tomorrow's shiur.